The grand chamber of the Galactic Council glittered with the light of 1,000 stars. Representatives from 200 species sat in curved rows that rose toward the ceiling. They whispered among themselves as Ambassador John Miller walked to the speaking platform. John took a deep breath. His blue uniform felt tight around his neck. The weight of every human colony rested on his shoulders today. "Esteemed members of the Council," he began. His voice carried across the silent room. "For 97 years, humanity has honored its commitments to this body. We have shared our resources. We have fought in your wars. We have opened our markets." A low murmur spread through the alien delegates. The large-eyed Vordax shifted uncomfortably. The insect-like Terendi clicked their mandibles in disapproval. "But for 97 years, John continued, we have not been treated as equals. Our colonies face strict limits. Our ships are searched without cause. Our military must ask permission to protect even our own people." The council leader, a tall blue-skinned Ellerin named Zakith, raised his hand. "Ambassador Miller, this body has explained many times why these measures exist. Your species advances too quickly. Your military doctrine is too aggressive. These are not punishments but necessary safeguards." John's face hardened. "Safeguards? Is that what you call your response to the Vraxian attacks on our outer colonies? 3 human worlds burned while your ships washed from orbit. Your safeguards cost us 50,000 lives." The chamber erupted in shouts. Some delegates stood and pointed at John. Others turned to their neighbors in heated debate. Susan Gray sat behind John. As Admiral of Earth's Defense Fleet, she had watched those colonies die. She had begged the Council for permission to engage the Vraxian ships. The memory still kept her awake at night. "Order!" Zakith shouted, his voice booming through the speakers. "Ambassador Miller, your accusations are inflammatory and misrepresent the complex situation." There was nothing complex about it, Susan whispered to herself. John pulled up images on the main screen. Burning cities, refugee ships, children in hospital beds. Last month, during the Arcturian crisis, Admiral Gray's fleet was ordered to stand down. The Council claimed our tactics were too aggressive. 20,000 more civilians died in an attack we could have prevented. He looked at each Council section in turn. "You fear our strength, yet you use it when convenient. You restrict our growth, then ask why we don't contribute more. You call us unpredictable, but ignore our warnings." The reptilian Drax representative hissed. "Humans want to dominate, not cooperate. Your history proves this." "Our history shows we learn from our mistakes," John replied. "Something this council seems unable to do." He straightened his shoulders and delivered the message he had come to give. 2 days ago, Earth's parliament voted. The decision was unanimous. Humanity will withdraw from the Galactic Council within 1 standard year. The chamber fell silent. Then chaos broke loose. Delegates shouted questions and threats. Some simply stared in disbelief. Zakith struck his staff against the floor. "Ambassador Miller, surely this is a negotiating tactic. The consequences of withdrawal are fully understood," John finished. "For nearly a century, we tried to belong here. But you never wanted partners. You wanted obedient children." John and Susan walked from the chamber as the uproar continued behind them. In the hallway, they stopped by a window overlooking the gleaming capital city of Nexus Prime. "It's done," Susan said quietly. John nodded. "Now the real work begins." Across human space, preparations were already underway. Ships were being built, supplies gathered, maps drawn of unexplored regions beyond Council territory. Humanity had tried to find its place among the stars within the Council's rules. Now they would make their own path. As their shuttle left Nexus Prime, neither John nor Susan looked back at the shining Council towers. Their eyes were fixed on the stars ahead. Captain Lisa Howard stood on the bridge of the EDF Relentless. Through the massive view screen, she watched hundreds of ships moving in careful formation. Colony ships, cargo vessels, military escorts, all part of the greatest migration in human history. "Status report," she said to her crew. "All ships from New Terra have cleared the gravity well," said First Officer Peter Dawson. "The Collins colony ships are next. We're right on schedule." Lisa nodded. The exodus had been planned with military precision. 27 human colonies across Council space were being evacuated simultaneously. Over 12 million people were on the move. She remembered the day the orders came through. Many had been shocked by the decision to physically leave Council space, not just politically withdraw. But the reasoning was sound. Humanity needed a fresh start, away from Council restrictions. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Nexus Prime," said Communications Officer Rick Gomes. "It's marked urgent." Lisa sighed. "Put it through." The screen flickered to show Kvoth, the Thraxian diplomat who led the Council's last-minute negotiations. "Captain Howard," Kvoth said, his tentacled face showing what humans had learned to recognize as distress. "Please relay to your government that the Council has approved new terms. We offer humanity 5 additional colony worlds and reduced oversight of military operations." Lisa kept her face neutral. "I will pass your message along, Diplomat Kvoth, but I should inform you that the Collins group has already departed. The decision has been made." "This is madness," Kvoth said. "You abandon established colonies, trade routes, protection, for what? Empty space and uncertainty." Lisa allowed herself a small smile. "What you call uncertainty, we call opportunity." After the transmission ended, Lisa walked to the observation deck. The massive colony ships below dwarfed her vessel. Each one carried thousands of families and everything they would need to rebuild. Defense Secretary Alan Parker had summed it up well in his statement to the press. Too little, too late. The Council had never taken human complaints seriously until now, when they realized what they were about to lose. On Nexus Prime, Dr. Olivia Wright packed the last of her research materials. As the leading human expert on alien cultures, she had spent decades trying to bridge the gap between humanity and the Council races. "Are you sure about this?" asked her alien assistant, a young Nilarian named Trell. "You could stay. Many would welcome you." Olivia looked around her empty office. "They never understood us, Trell. They saw our adaptability as chaos, our individualism as a threat, our creativity as dangerous. Perhaps separation is best for all." She handed Trell a data crystal. "My complete research. I hope someone finds it useful." Across Council space, similar scenes played out. Businesses closed. Embassies emptied. Military bases transferred to Council control. 100 years of human integration, undone in less than 12 months. Not all Council races celebrated. The merchant guilds of Dravix VI protested loudly. Human goods had become essential to their economy. The security forces of the Outer Rim worried about the gaps human military ships would leave in their patrols. But in the Grand Council chamber, many delegates quietly expressed relief. The troublesome humans were leaving voluntarily. No conflict, no war, a diplomatic victory. "They will come crawling back within a decade," predicted Senior Counselor Zhen of the Volus Confederacy. "Their independent colonies will fail without our support network." The final human embassy on Nexus Prime closed without ceremony. Ambassador John Miller and his staff boarded the last shuttle as Council security watched from a distance. "Do you think they're right?" asked a young diplomatic aide. "Will we regret this?" John looked back at the gleaming spires of the Council capital one last time. "No," he said firmly. "We're not running away. We're running toward something better." As the last human ships vanished into the darkness beyond Council space, the galaxy held its breath. The troublemakers were gone. Peace and order would surely follow. They couldn't be more wrong. 20 years passed. The region of space beyond the Council borders became known as the Quiet Zone. Few signals came from human territories. Fewer ships crossed the boundary. The Council races watched and waited, but humanity seemed to have vanished into the darkness between stars. Many Council members believed humans were struggling to survive without Council trade networks and protection. Some even prepared aid packages, certain that desperate human representatives would soon arrive begging for help. They were wrong. Behind the self-imposed border, humanity flourished. Free from council restrictions, human innovation exploded in ways that would have horrified their former allies. Dr. Kevin Martinez wiped sweat from his forehead as he studied the holographic display. For 10 years, he had worked on what the Council had declared impossible: the quantum fold drive. The technology would allow ships to travel at speeds the Council's scientists had labeled theoretically unreachable. "Run the simulation again," he told his team. "I think we've solved the field stability issue." The simulation showed a ship folding space around itself, traveling 1,000 light-years in days instead of decades. The numbers held steady. Kevin smiled. "Prepare for a live test." Across human space, similar breakthroughs happened daily. In her laboratory on New Earth, engineer Samantha Nelson perfected stable microfusion. The energy cores were small enough to fit in a backpack, but powerful enough to run a small city. The Council would never have allowed this research, she told her assistant as they watched the tiny reactor glow with steady light. They would have called it too dangerous, too unpredictable. Her assistant nodded. "Their loss, our gain." The old colonies, now called the Founding Worlds, had been re-established and expanded. 27 new worlds had been settled. The human population had doubled, then doubled again. Without council bureaucracy slowing them down, new cities rose in months rather than years. But the greatest change wasn't technological. The human cooperative formed from the shared experience of exodus and rebuilding. It was neither an empire nor a republic, but something uniquely human. The cooperative balanced individual freedom with collective responsibility. Every world governed itself but contributed to the common good. Governor Karl Myers addressed the Colonial Assembly on Harmony, the newest human world. "We have built something here the Council could never understand. They mistook our diversity for division, our debates for weakness. They never saw that our strength comes from our differences, not despite them." Meanwhile, the Council faced unexpected problems. Trade routes once secured by human fleets became dangerous. Pirates and raiders grew bold in sectors where human warships no longer patrolled. The Vraxian hegemony, no longer contained by human border fleets, expanded aggressively. They seized 3 Council worlds in rapid succession. The Council fleet struggled to respond effectively. Resource shortages appeared. Human minds had supplied rare elements needed for advanced technologies. Human farms had produced food for dozens of worlds. The Council had not realized how integrated humans had become in their economy until they were gone. Council diplomat Zelfar wrote in a private message to his government, "We removed a cornerstone and act surprised when the structure weakens." The humans were not parasites as some claimed, but essential partners. Their absence reveals our dependence more than their presence ever did. In the Council chambers, debates grew heated. Some called for military expeditions into human space to restore order. Others suggested diplomatic missions offering new, more equal partnerships. But pride held them back. To approach humans now would be to admit they had been wrong. And so they watched, and waited, and slowly declined while humanity grew stronger in the silence beyond their borders. On the 23rd anniversary of the Exodus, sensors detected an unusual signal from the border. A human ship, larger and more advanced than any seen before, approached Council space. The message it broadcast was simple. "Greetings from the human cooperative. We wish to reestablish contact. The silence ends now." The galaxy held its breath once more. The message spread across the galaxy in hours. "We are returning to galactic society, though not to the Council. We come in peace and seek trade partners." Council races reacted with a mixture of alarm and curiosity. What had the humans become during their years of isolation? Some feared an invasion. Others saw opportunity. The Council itself called an emergency session. "We must approach this with caution," said Grand Councilor Icarus. "The humans were unpredictable before. Who knows what 23 years of isolation has done to them?" The Council voted to send observers to Omega Station, a neutral trading hub where the humans had announced they would make first contact. No official Council representatives would attend. That would suggest the Council feared or needed humans. But every major race sent independent traders to watch and report back. The human ship arrived exactly on time. It glided into the docking bay of Omega Station with a grace that made observers gasp. The HC Ambassadorial was unlike any vessel they had seen before. Its design was elegant, efficient, and utterly alien to Council aesthetics. Trade Representative Daniel Cook led the human delegation. He walked with confidence, but without arrogance as he greeted the station manager. "Thank you for hosting us," he said. "We bring greetings from the Human Cooperative and look forward to renewing old friendships." Daniel and his team wore simple but strange clothing. Their translator devices worked instantly across all languages, with none of the delay common in Council technology. When a Dravix merchant cut his hand in an accident, a human medic healed it in seconds with a small device that left no scar. Word spread quickly. The humans had changed, advanced far beyond expectations. In a private room, Daniel met with independent traders from major Council races. He presented data on human goods available for trade, medical technology, advanced materials, efficient energy systems. Each item represented science the Council had thought impossible or had classified as too dangerous to develop. "The Vraxian border raids have increased," said a Thraxian merchant. "Would human ships be available for escort duty?" Daniel smiled. "The cooperative does not provide military services for hire, but we do protect our trading partners as part of our mutual defense agreements." The meaning was clear. Alliance with humans came with protection. Many races began to rethink their Council loyalties. When news reached the Council, they scrambled to respond. "We must regulate this," declared Security Chief Zorn. Uncontrolled technology transfer could destabilize the entire sector. But it was too late. Within 6 months, 70% of Council races had established independent trade agreements with the Human Cooperative, bypassing Council regulations entirely. Human medical stations opened across the galaxy, offering treatments for diseases the Council still struggled to control. Human ships appeared in trade lanes, their advanced sensors detecting and deterring pirates with ease. Human engineering teams helped rebuild infrastructure on worlds the Council had deemed too expensive to restore. On Nexus Prime, the Council Center for Advanced Studies invited Dr. Olivia Wright to give a lecture on human development during the silent years. The hall was packed with scientists and diplomats eager to understand what had happened. "You assumed we would fail without you," Dr. Wright told them. "That was your first mistake. Your second was believing we needed what you offered more than you needed what we provided." She showed them images of human worlds, cities that blended with forests, orbital habitats that housed millions in comfort, ships that could cross the galaxy in weeks. "We did not leave to punish you," she said. "We left to become what you would never let us be." As she spoke, human traders and diplomats spread across Council space, forging new connections and partnerships. They brought technological marvels but asked for little in return except fair treatment and respect. The balance of power had shifted, and everyone knew it. The Council still ruled, but their authority diminished with each new human treaty. A new galactic order was emerging, one where humanity stood not as supplicants but as leaders. And then the Vraxians attacked. The Vraxian attack came without warning. Their warships poured across the border in waves, striking at Council worlds with brutal efficiency. The once mighty Council defense fleet crumbled. 3 major worlds fell in the first week, 5 more in the second. Millions died. Millions more fled as refugees. The Council had grown complacent during the peaceful years. Their ships were outdated, their crews undertrained. The Vraxians had been planning this for decades, building their forces in secret beyond Council scanning range. On Nexus Prime, the Council chamber was filled with shouts and accusations. Delegates blamed each other for the military weakness, for the intelligence failure, for the lack of preparation. Silence, Grand Counselor Etheris slammed his staff against the floor. The room quieted. Blame solves nothing. We need solutions. Our analysts say we cannot win this war with our current forces. We need help. A Thraxian delegate stood. The humans. Their ships are advanced. Their defensive capabilities beyond anything we have seen. Murmurs filled the room. Pride warred with desperation. The Council had spent a century limiting human military power. Now they would beg for that same power to save them. It would be humiliating, said Security Chief Zorn. Extinction is more humiliating, replied Ambassador Trell of the Narration Union, whose homeworld had been the third to fall. After hours of debate, the Council made its decision. Grand Counselor Etheris composed a formal request for aid and sent it to the human cooperative. 3 days passed with no response. The Vraxians took 2 more systems. Refugees flooded safer worlds. Food shortages began. Then word came that a human representative would address the Council. Jack Monroe walked into the Council chamber alone. The human diplomat wore a simple gray suit. His face showed neither anger nor triumph as he stood before the rulers who had once restricted his people. 27 years ago, Jack began, we begged for your help when the Vraxians attacked our colonies. You refused. You called our military response disproportionate when we defended ourselves. You sanctioned us for protecting our own people. The chamber was completely silent. Every delegate knew the history. Many had been part of those very decisions. Jack let the silence stretch. Then he spoke again. We have not forgotten. Faces fell around the room. Some delegates closed their eyes in resignation. But we have forgiven, Jack continued. The human cooperative will render assistance against the Vraxian threat. Our ships are already moving to defensive positions. Our medical teams are preparing for casualties. Our supply ships will follow. Relief swept through the chamber. Delegates turned to each other in shock and hope. There will be no charge for this aid, Jack added. No political demands. No territorial concessions. We do this because it is right. Because no species deserves what the Vraxians are doing. Not even those who once turned their backs on us. 3 days later, human ships arrived at the front lines. Fleet Commander Nicole Harris directed the operation from her flagship, HC Defender. The Vraxian commanders laughed when they saw the small human fleet facing their massive armada. They stopped laughing when their sensors went dead, when their communications failed, when their targeting systems showed ghost ships that weren't there. The human ships moved with impossible speed and precision. Their weapons cut through Vraxian shields like they didn't exist. Their own defenses deflected everything thrown at them. It wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. Within 12 hours, the Vraxian advance fleet was disabled or retreating. Within 3 days, the human ships had pushed them back to pre-war boundaries. Within 2 weeks, Nicole's fleet was approaching Vraxian space itself. The Council watched in amazement as the war they had expected to last decades ended in less than a month. The humans fought with efficiency, but not cruelty. They disabled ships when possible, rather than destroying them. They evacuated Vraxian civilians from battle zones. We could have built this kind of force if we had allowed their development, whispered one council member to another. We feared their potential so much that we nearly destroy ourselves without it. When the Vraxians finally requested peace talks, they asked for the humans to mediate. The peace terms surprised everyone. The human cooperative did not demand Vraxian territory or resources. They did not insist on military occupation or harsh reparations. Instead, they proposed boundaries, monitoring stations, and gradual normalization of relations. This is too generous, complained Security Chief Zorn at the Council review session. The Vraxians attacked without provocation. They deserve punishment. Ambassador Trell of the Nilarians, whose people had suffered greatly in the war, shook his head. The humans understand something we forgot. Today's enemy might be tomorrow's ally. Crushing the Vraxians would only plant seeds for future conflict. The galaxy began to adjust to a new reality. The human cooperative established diplomatic posts throughout known space, but maintained its independence from the Council. Their embassy on Nexus Prime was a simple building, noticeable for its lack of grandeur compared to other species' headquarters. Council races that once looked down on humans now sought their technology, their methods, their insights. Trading with humans became the fastest way for a world to advance. Learning from humans became the surest path to security. Human stations became neutral ground where even bitter rivals could meet safely. When the Drax and Volus nearly went to war over mining rights, human mediators helped them find a solution both sides accepted. Human medical technology spread to the furthest corners of the galaxy. Diseases that had plagued species for generations vanished. Human agricultural methods turned barren worlds into garden planets. Human energy systems replaced polluting technologies with clean alternatives. 6 months after the end of the Vraxian War, humanity introduced the Galactic Exchange. It was an alternative to the Council's rigid structure, a place where knowledge and resources flowed freely between members. Membership was open to all, including races the Council had rejected as insufficiently developed. The exchange does not dictate, explained Maria Chen, the exchange's first director. We facilitate. We connect those with needs to those with solutions. We believe all species have something valuable to contribute. The exchange grew rapidly. Even some council races split their diplomatic efforts, maintaining council membership while actively participating in exchange programs. The old order was changing, not through force, but through choice. On worlds far from Nexus Prime, statues of human heroes appeared. Admiral Nicole Harris was honored on a dozen planets for her role in defeating the Vraxians. Dr. Olivia Reich's cultural exchange programs became models for interspecies cooperation. The humans who had once been feared were now celebrated. Council historian Trelvox wrote in his private journal, "We restricted them, thinking containment was safety. We never considered what would happen when they outgrew their cage. Yet they did not return seeking revenge. They offered partnership without demanding submission. This is perhaps why they succeed where we failed." In the Grand Council chamber, attendance at official sessions declined. More delegates spent their time at exchange meetings or human-sponsored conferences. The humans had created something new, something that worked better than the old system. Amy Foster, a human teacher working on a distant council world, watched her mixed class of alien children learn together. They came from species that had been enemies for generations. Now they worked on projects side by side. "My grandfather was Ambassador Miller's aide," she told a colleague. "He was there when humanity decided to leave. He said they hoped to build something better than what they were leaving behind." She smiled as a young Vraxian helped a small Thraxian with a difficult problem. Species that had been at war now sat together in classrooms. "I think we succeeded." Across the galaxy, human ideas spread alongside human technology. Cooperation replaced competition. Innovation flourished where regulation had once stifled growth. Species that had been ignored by the Council found their voices in the exchange. Humanity didn't seek revenge or domination, just a galaxy where differences were celebrated rather than regulated, where innovation wasn't feared, where every species could reach its full potential. And the Council watched as its influence diminished day by day. The old order was fading. Something new was taking its place. 50 years had passed since humanity left the Council. The galaxy had changed more in those 5 decades than in the previous 1,000 years. The human cooperative and its galactic exchange now connected nearly every corner of known space. Meanwhile, the once mighty Galactic Council faced a crisis. Grand Councilor Etheris looked out at the half-empty chamber. Only 96 species still sent full-time representatives to Nexus Prime. The others maintained token presences, while focusing their real diplomatic efforts on exchange relations. "We must face reality," Etheris told the Executive Committee. "The Council is becoming irrelevant. Half our member worlds now consider the exchange their primary alliance." The debate lasted 7 days. Arguments grew heated. Old pride battled new pragmatism. In the end, the result was clear. By a narrow margin, the Council voted for a course of action that would have been unthinkable just years before. The Galactic Council would formally dissolve and request membership in the human exchange as individual species rather than as a unified body. Ambassador Fred Rogers received the Council's message at the human embassy on Nexus Prime. He read it twice to be sure he understood. Then he contacted Earth. "It's unprecedented," he told Director Maria Chen. "They're not just asking to join. They're disbanding their entire governmental structure." Maria nodded. "History doesn't always move slowly, Fred. Sometimes change happens all at once." 2 weeks later, Ben Foster arrived on Nexus Prime. As the grandson of a naval officer who had participated in the Exodus, he had been chosen to formally accept the Council's request. The ceremony took place in the Grand Council chamber, the same room where Ambassador John Miller had announced humanity's departure 50 years earlier. Representatives from all remaining Council races attended. The mood was solemn but hopeful. Aetherists presented the Council's Grand Seal, the symbol of their authority for over 500 years. "We offer this not in surrender, but in recognition that the future lies with the path humanity has shown us." Then accepted the seal with a bow. "The exchange welcomes all who seek mutual prosperity and respect, even former Council members." He looked around the chamber. "Our goal was never to replace the Council, but to create a system where all species could thrive together. The exchange is not a human organization. It belongs to all who participate. Your voices, your wisdom, your unique perspectives will strengthen us all." That evening, a celebration filled the gardens of Nexus Prime. Species that had once been bitter enemies now mingled freely. Music from a dozen worlds played while food from 100 planets was shared. Former Admiral Susan Gray attended as an honored guest. Now in her 90s, she moved slowly but her eyes remained sharp. A young reporter approached her. "Admiral Gray, you were present when humanity left the Council. Now you've witnessed the Council joining humanity's exchange. Do you feel vindicated after all these years?" Susan watched as a group of children, human, Vraxian, Thraxian, Nilarian, and others, played a game together under the stars. Species that had once fought wars now shared laughter. "This was never about vindication," she said. "It was about creating the galaxy we always knew was possible. Humanity didn't leave to punish the Council. We left to show them a better way." The reporter looked confused. "But the Council is gone now. They failed." Susan shook her head. "No, young man. The Council's structure failed, not its people. Look around you. Every species that made up the Council is still here, still contributing to galactic society. They've simply found a better way to work together." As the celebration continued, ships from across the galaxy arrived at Nexus Prime. The old capital of the Council would now serve as the central hub of the exchange. Not because humans demanded it, but because it made practical sense. The galaxy had indeed never recovered from humanity's departure, because it had evolved into something greater than the Council ever allowed it to be. Not a place of rigid rules and careful restrictions, but one of cooperation, innovation, and shared progress. As Susan Gray looked up at the stars, she thought of John Miller and the brave choice made 50 years ago. "We found our way," she whispered. "All of us, together."